Now, once they get kind of into St. Lo, there's a colonel shows up, starts getting told what to do. Back to the book, the colonel was giving orders again. I want you to clear this town as quickly as you can. There aren't many Germans in it, but there are a few, and I want it all clear. Your battalion is the only infantry we have with the task force. As you are the ranking officer, you will be in command of all the troops in town. He looked closely at the major, who nodded, trying to contain the elation he felt, knowing that he would have command on the ground of what would undoubtedly be a historical action. The colonel thrust a map at him. Here's a large-scale map of the town itself. Now get going. Major Johns turned to look for Weddell, and Gremsel. His two staff officers turned company commanders. Both were almost at his elbow. He drew them to one side and divided the town between them. So now they're kind of on the outskirts of St. Lo, and they're starting to clear the town. And so the companies go out and start clearing the town. And they've set up a little makeshift command post for Major Johns. And he's standing there he's got a bunch of new guys with him too. Mm. He's got all these replacements. Because remember, an hour and a half ago when I said, hey, these guys have already had 300 replacements. Well, that has kept up the whole time. They're getting all these replacements. So at this point, this is an interesting leadership story here. He's got some new guys that show up, and he's standing in his new command post, and these new guys, he sees like a position that needs to be taken to make sure that, you know, we have some security around the command post. And so here we go. He motioned to the PFC and 3 other men standing nearby. They came forward, rifles ready. So these are 3 new guys, just replacements, just showed up. And again, probably the most fire they've seen was running into the town of St. Lo, avoiding big, giant howitzer shells that are hitting them. Back to the book. See that alley there, said Johns, pointing? I want you to take these 3 men and go down to the end of it. Looks like about 100 yards, where you will set up an outpost. Lieutenant Lickery will come around later to see how you're doing. The PFC squinted down the alley, nodded a trifle uncertainly, and started toward it. The others followed, but the major was too preoccupied to note that there had been no briefing and no assignment of positions or duties. They just trooped off down the alley together like a bunch of men going to the post exchange. 2 minutes after they left, the sound of German machine gun fire came from the direction of the narrow passageway. Johns turned to look. Out of the alley pelted the 4 men, straight toward him. The private first class panted, "Sir, there's a machine gun down there." The battalion commander didn't know whether to be amused or angry. There was no telling what the new men were apt to do if they didn't have leadership of an experienced or well-trained non-com or officer. He decided to be gentle. "Yes, I heard it. Now, tell you what to do. You take these 3 men again, assign one to take a place where he can shoot at the gun or where you think the gun is. Then take the other 2 and see if you can't come around behind it and get it for me." So little cover and move. It's real simple. Little cover and move. You get where you can shoot the gun. Have that guy get where you can shoot the gun. And then you guys maneuver behind it. Cover and move. Beautiful. The PFC took that in, nodded somewhat less uncertainly, motioned to the men to follow him, and started purposefully back down the alley. In not more than 5 minutes, there came in rapid succession the sound of the machine gun, a few rifle shots, 2 grenades, and running feet. Johns had moved across the street looking for the best place for a temporary command post. He turned toward the mouth of the alley, wondering what would come out this time. 2 Germans showed first, running toward him at full speed. Before the major could bring his submachine gun up, he saw the PFC and 1 other man prodding the Germans from behind with bayonets. They spotted him and poked the prisoner in his direction. They stopped in front of him before he noticed the MG-34 the PFC was dragging behind him. So they actually had the German machine gun. The man dropped the gun in front of him, saying, "Here's the gun you wanted, Major. But this is all that's left of the crew. We had to kill 2 of them, sir." Major Johns gulped, nodded, and motioned to Gay, who was another one of the guys, to come to get the prisoners. The private first class and his helpers jogged back toward their new outpost. The major looked after them, wondering just what sort of training or indoctrination they must have had, first to run away from an enemy without trying to fight back, and then to apologize for having killed 2. He looked down at the battered German machine gun, kicked it idly, and reminded himself to be more careful in issuing orders to new men. They were apt to take things a bit on the literal side. He was sure that the PFC had actually thought that the CO himself had a personal desire for the machine gun they had knocked out, and that he would have gone to any ends to retrieve the gun itself in order to bring it back, just because the major had added that "for me" when he ordered them to get the gun.
Yeah, that's like a common thing to kind of add, right? Like, you know how back when I used to work at the nightclub, you'd hear that all the time, like, especially when you're managing big crowds. So you say, hey, can you slide over on the side here for me? And they'd always add the "for me."
Oh, yeah.
And I always thought, like, that's kind of a strange thing to add. I mean, it's so common. So, but when you really think about it, it's like kind of a strange thing to add. But I think it like adds like this personal touch.
Well, it does.
Like,
a little too personal.
Yeah,
for Major Johns on that one.
Apparently.
All right.